Hey guys, tonight we drift into the salty night air of a moonlit harbor, where ships creak softly against their moorings, and sailors mutter in hushed tones as though the ocean itself might overhear their secrets. Lanterns sway on wooden posts, their dim glow scattering on damp cobblestones. The tide pulls and releases like a slow breath, and for a moment, you can almost believe you're safe. But you're not. You probably won't survive this. At least, not if you keep following the footsteps of the men we're about to meet. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love knowing where and when you're tuning in. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wander down the dock, stepping past barrels of salted fish, heaps of tangled ropes, and sailors slumped in shadowy tavern corners. Their laughter is coarse, their pockets light, their spirits dulled by too many voyages under cruel captains. The smell of stale ale and sweat hangs thick in the air. Here is where the story begins, not with gold or fame, but with exhaustion and bitterness. You feel the sting of salt spray on your cheeks as you board a modest merchant vessel. Its deck worn by years of labor. You see the sailors up close now, sunburned skin, calloused hands, and eyes dulled by long days of toil. Historical fact: in the 17th century, many ordinary sailors were paid little or not at all until a voyage was complete, leaving them trapped under strict contracts and ruthless discipline. Imagine working endless hours, only to wonder if the captain might vanish with your wages once you dock. Oddly enough, some sailors clung to tiny quirks of defiance, carving rude symbols into the wooden rails, or swapping secret songs mocking their officers. Scholars still argue whether these small rebellions were just venting steam or the early sparks of outright mutiny. Either way, you sense the pressure building beneath the surface. The harbor becomes a stage of contrasts. Wealthy merchants strolling with smug smiles, while gaunt sailors haggle for scraps of bread. A group of young men lingers at the edge of a pier, watching ships slip away into the night, their faces torn between longing and dread. You stand among them, feeling that same pull, the ocean promising freedom, yet demanding sacrifice. Somewhere in a dark corner of the tavern, a seasoned rogue leans forward with a grin too wide to be honest. His whispers carry tales of silver coins clinking in open chests, of rum flowing without ration, of life without the lash of a captain's whip. You notice the way tired sailors lean closer, their eyes brightening for the first time in weeks. Freedom, plunder, adventure, all glitter far more brightly than the dim lanterns. Yet outside, the tide surges against the wooden piers, a quiet reminder that choices here are irreversible. You step back into the night air, the scent of tar and brine filling your lungs. The harbor stretches before you like an unwritten page, and you sense that these sailors, weary of obedience, are already halfway transformed. They are men standing at the edge, just waiting for the final push. The moment they step from sailors into outlaws. The harbor fades behind you as dawn breaks, casting a pale gray light over the restless sea. You find yourself on deck once more, surrounded by the grind of daily sailor life. The ropes creak as they're hauled, sails snap in the wind, and orders barked from above strike like whips through the air. There's no romance here, only sweat, aching muscles, and the endless monotony of tasks repeated under the unforgiving sun. You taste the salt on your lips, not from the sea spray, but from the sweat dripping down your brow. You move among the sailors and feel their weariness. Their wool tunics are stiff with salt, their feet bare and blistered, their hands cut raw from rope burns. A sailor hums under his breath, a tune meant to keep rhythm with the labor. But even that sounds more like a groan. They work for hours upon hours, only to collapse in cramped quarters below deck. Historical fact: sailors in the 17th and 18th centuries often slept in shifts as short as 4 hours at a time, with hammocks crammed so tightly together they could barely swing without brushing the man beside them. Food offers little comfort. You chew hard, tasteless biscuits that crumble like chalk between your teeth. Some pieces squirm with tiny weevils, which most men ignore. After all, the insects add a little extra protein. Odd detail: many sailors joked about tapping the hardtack on the table to let the bugs crawl out before eating. The smell of salted meat, sour beer, and stagnant water fills the cramped mess, making you gag even before you swallow. You feel the weight of hierarchy pressing down as heavily as the humid air. Captains and officers eat better, drink fresher, and enjoy cleaner quarters. The sailors grumble quietly, but no punishment waits for anyone who speaks too loudly. A lash of the cat-o'-nine-tails can tear skin from bone, leaving scars that never fade. Scholars still argue whether sailors tolerated this abuse out of loyalty, necessity, or sheer lack of alternatives. But whatever the reason, you see their spirits shrink a little more each day. The deck is not just a workplace, it's a prison of sorts. You feel it in the way the horizon stretches endlessly, with no promise of land. You feel it in the way the sailors glance at each other when the officers aren't looking, their eyes carrying questions too dangerous to ask aloud. What if we didn't have to live like this? You notice little acts of survival. A sailor hides a stolen slice of dried fish inside his shirt. Another sharpens a small knife when no one's watching. Someone else tells whispered stories about crews that broke free, sailors who chose rebellion and lived like kings for a while, before fate caught up to them. The line between myth and truth blurs, but the effect is undeniable. You feel the men leaning toward the possibility of another life. The sea itself offers no comfort. Storms roll in without warning, soaking you to the bone, tearing sails, and tossing the ship like a toy. The sailors cling to ropes until their hands bleed, praying they won't be swept overboard. And when the sky's clear, the sun blazes mercilessly, scorching skin until it peels. Life as an ordinary sailor is not romantic. It's survival, one grueling day at a time. And yet, somewhere deep down, you sense a shift. Each hardship, the rotten food, the harsh punishment, the endless toil, chisels away at obedience. Every injustice is a grain of sand tipping the scales toward rebellion. Tonight, as you lie in your hammock listening to the groans and snores of exhausted men, you feel it clearly. Sailors are not born outlaws, but this life is slowly, inevitably shaping them into ones. You're on deck again, and the world has tilted. The horizon blurs, not from waves this time, but from whispers drifting like smoke between sailors. These whispers carry a dangerous spark. What if the ship could be ours? You catch them in fragments. A laugh too sharp, a glance too long. A sudden silence when an officer passes by. Rebellion doesn't arrive with a trumpet blast. It sneaks in like a thief at night, and tonight you can feel it pacing just behind your shoulder. The air is thick with frustration. Sailors grind their teeth over pay that never seems to arrive, or arrives in coins so meager they vanish after a single stop at port. You hear a man mutter that merchants grow fat while sailors grow thin. Another curses the captain's polished boots while his own soles wear down to nothing. The gap between the officer's table and the sailor's rations feels wider than the ocean itself. Historical fact: wages for common sailors were not only pitifully low, but often withheld until a voyage ended, which meant months, sometimes years, without seeing a single coin. Worse, if a sailor died at sea, his pay often stayed in the captain's purse. You don't need a scholar to explain why men might dream of cutting themselves loose from this system. The tension builds in small explosions. A sailor refuses an order. Another answers back with more heat than sense. An officer threatens flogging, and suddenly you see fists clenching, jaws tightening. One spark could ignite the powder keg. Odd detail. Some captains, paranoid of mutiny, ordered the ship's pistols and powder to be locked away at night, as if a few wooden chests could contain the boiling anger of 100 men. You find yourself caught in the middle of this invisible battlefield. The officers bark and the sailors obey, but only just. Every command is met with slower hands, colder eyes, and the heavy silence of men thinking about something else entirely. You imagine yourself in their place, muscles aching from rope and storm, bellies grumbling, bodies marked by lash scars. Scholars still argue whether mutiny was always born from desperation, or if sometimes it was simply greed disguised as justice. Either way, you feel how quickly loyalty dissolves when hunger gnaws, when injustice festers, when the horizon stretches too long without hope. And then the ship changes at night. The officers retreat to their cabins, their bellies full of wine, their heads heavy with arrogance. The sailors gather in the dim glow of lanterns, voices low, hands busy with pipes or knives or cards. That's when the whispers sharpen into plans. Someone mentions a stormy night, when sails could mask the chaos. Another imagines tying the captain in his own hammock. You hear a laugh, but it isn't lighthearted. It's the laugh of men who have already crossed the line in their minds. You lean closer and feel the heat of possibility. A ship could become theirs, a floating world of freedom, if only they dared. Of course, freedom also smells of blood. You sense the weight of knives tucked into belts, of iron bars used for more than rigging. Men stare at each other too long, gauging courage, testing loyalty. And then it hits you. Mutiny is not some abstract rebellion. It's a living, breathing creature, born from hunger, injustice, and hope. You hear it in the shuffle of cards, the scrape of a blade across wood, the whispered promise that tomorrow might be different. You realize you're standing on a tightrope stretched between obedience and chaos, and the ship itself shudders with every step. By the time dawn peeks over the waves, you know the truth. Sailors don't become outlaws in a single moment. They practice it here, in these hushed exchanges, in the dangerous rhythm of their heartbeats syncing with the roll of the sea. Tonight's whispers may die in silence, but another night will come, and the tide will turn. The morning sun cuts through mist like a blade, and you squint as the shoreline creeps into view. Port, a word that tastes sweet and sour at the same time. Sweet because it means land, coin, and maybe a woman's smile. Sour because you know the streets beyond the docks carry temptations heavier than any anchor. You watch as the crew bustles with restless energy, like caged dogs sensing the door about to open. Your boots hit the planks of the pier, and suddenly the world explodes with noise. Hawkers shouting, gulls screeching, tavern doors swinging. The air smells of fish guts, sweat, spices, and something less pleasant you try not to name. Sailors scatter into the streets, drawn to the glow of taverns and brothels the way moths seek flame. You follow, because in port, you either keep moving or get swallowed whole. Inside a tavern, the ceiling hangs low with smoke. Tankards slam, dice rattle, and sailors who were grumbling with mutiny just days ago now roar with laughter. Their pockets are light, but their thirst is heavy. A barmaid slides a drink into your hand before you can protest, and suddenly the room tilts into warmth and noise. Here's your historical fact for this stretch. Sailors often spent their hard-earned wages in a single night or two, funneling it into ale, dice, and company. Some ports became infamous for crimps, shady figures who lured drunk sailors into signing contracts they didn't even understand, binding them to more voyages they never wanted. You imagine a man waking up, head pounding, discovering he's already sold the next 2 years of his life for the price of last night's ale. You take another sip, and someone bumps into you, a fellow sailor, but his grin is sharper than it should be. He whispers of quicker fortunes beyond the law, of ships that fly no nation's flag. Odd detail. In some ports, recruiters for pirate crews literally hid in tavern cellars, waiting for desperate or drunken men to stumble into their hands. You can almost feel the trapdoors creak beneath your boots. The streets outside stretch like veins pulsing with mischief. You hear the slap of boots on cobblestone, the crack of fists in alley fights, the shrill laughter of women pulling sailors into shadowy doorways. The further you walk, the more the city feels like a carnival of danger. A man boasts of treasure maps. Another swears he saw a ship crewed entirely by ghosts. You laugh, but part of you wonders. And always, behind the noise, lurks hunger. Not for bread or broth, though plenty of bellies growl, but for something more. Freedom, adventure, a chance to spit in the face of men who grow rich off your sweat. You feel it in your bones as sailors gamble their last coins, as dice clatter like cannon shot across tables. Scholars still argue whether ports were merely dens of vice or essential lifelines for sailors, the only spaces where men could reclaim some shred of humanity. You're not sure where you stand, but as you watch a shipmate vanish into the arms of a stranger, and another stagger out with blood on his lip, you know one thing. Ports were crucibles. They burned away restraint. They forged decisions. By the time the night deepens, you find yourself outside again. The lamps flicker, shadows lengthen, and a drunk sailor tries to sell you a rusted cutlass with the promise it once belonged to a pirate king. You wave him off, but your mind lingers. Pirate king. The words tangle with the rum in your veins. Could it be real? Could those whispers at sea turn into something more in places like this? And then you catch sight of a small group disappearing down a side street, led by a man with a scar that seems carved by fate itself. He doesn't glance back, but you know, you feel, that if you follow, you'll be stepping closer to a different kind of life. The taverns fade behind you. The sea waits ahead. And somewhere between the two, the idea of piracy sharpens into possibility. Ports are crossroads, and tonight, you've walked far enough to know you won't always choose the safe road. The night air clings to your skin as you follow that scarred figure down a narrow street. Cobblestones glisten with spilled ale and horse piss, lantern light bending shadows into jagged shapes. The laughter and music of the taverns fade behind you, replaced by whispers and footsteps that echo like conspiracies. You hesitate, but curiosity drags you onward. You duck into a dim warehouse by the docks, the air thick with salt and smoke. Inside, men gather in a rough circle, their faces weathered like driftwood. They don't look like ordinary sailors anymore. Their clothes are patched but proudly worn, their belts heavy with blades that catch the lantern glow. On a crate in the center lies a map, edges curled, stained with rum and perhaps something darker. The scarred man leans over it, speaking low. Words like plunder, freedom, and fortune slip through the cracks in his whisper. You notice how every eye in the room glitters when he says, "No captain, no king." That's the bait. No master above you, no merchant owning your sweat. Just men, equal, bound by oath and loot. Here's your historical fact. Pirate crews often ran on surprisingly democratic lines. Captains were elected, and they could be replaced if they failed the crew. Decisions about plunder, punishments, and even sailing routes were debated and voted on. For men crushed under the rigid hierarchy of naval life, this freedom was intoxicating. Odd detail, some pirate crews even had written articles of agreement, basically pirate constitutions, listing how loot would be divided, how injuries would be compensated, and what rules must be followed. You can picture it now. Men who could barely write, carving their laws into parchment with the seriousness of kings. The scarred man slams a dagger into the map, right where a fat merchant route snakes across the sea. Murmurs ripple. He talks of ships so stuffed with silver they sink low in the water, of barrels of wine waiting to be claimed, of freedom bought not with coin, but with courage. And then he looks directly at you. Your heart stutters. Do you say yes? Do you let yourself fall into this madness, into this chance to turn outlaw? Around you, men nod, spit in their palms, clasp hands. The initiation isn't grand. No trumpets, no banners. Just a shared glance, a muttered oath, and the quiet understanding that stepping forward means stepping away from the world you once knew. Scholars still argue whether sailors turned pirate out of desperation or conviction. Some say it was hunger that drove them. Others claim it was ideology, the lure of equality and shared power. Maybe it's both. You feel it in the room, the ache in your gut, the thrill in your blood. You're not sure if you're running from the lash or running toward freedom. Maybe both. The meeting ends with a toast of stolen rum, mugs clashing like cannon fire. The scarred man grins, teeth glinting in the dark, and says, "Tomorrow, lads, the sea is ours." The others roar agreement, the sound raw and feral, as though some hidden animal in every sailor has just been unleashed. You slip out into the night, the sea breeze colder now, sharper, tasting of iron and salt. Your boots crunch against the pier, and you realize the ship waiting in shadow is no ordinary vessel. Its sails are patched, its flag absent, its deck humming with the restless movements of men who no longer answer to crowns. Your pulse quickens. The ship rocks gently, inviting, daring you to climb aboard. Tomorrow, you'll cast off not as a sailor, but as something else entirely. Something the world both fears and secretly admires. You're not just running away from orders and starvation. You're stepping into a legend that will spread like wildfire. The stars above scatter like coins across the sky, and for the first time, you wonder if some of them are waiting for you. The ship creaks beneath your boots, timbers groaning like an old man adjusting in bed. The smell of tar, salt, and sweat thickens in your nostrils. You've stepped into a world that has no flag, no uniform, no anthem, but the pounding of waves against the hull. The men around you are grinning, but it's not the grin of ordinary sailors. It's sharper, full of mischief and menace. Tonight you're about to learn how they bind themselves, not just to a ship, but to each other. A lantern is set on a barrel, its light barely enough to show the circle forming on deck. At the center, a parchment is unrolled. The edges are torn, spattered with grease and rum stains, the ink smudged in places. But the words are deliberate, bold, written by some rough hand with surprising care. These are the pirate articles, the code that keeps chaos from eating the crew alive. You read as one man points. Shares of plunder are carefully divided. Captain and quartermaster might get 2 shares each, but the ordinary sailor still earns far more than he ever did under a merchant. Injuries are accounted for. Lose an arm, get a set amount of silver. Lose an eye, another sum. It's crude, but it's a form of insurance policy long before governments dreamed of such things. Historical fact: real pirate codes did exist, like those recorded under captains such as Bartholomew Roberts and Henry Morgan. They were practical documents, making sure no one could accuse another of cheating, or at least limiting how often knives would flash over arguments. One odd detail: some codes even banned gambling on board, reasoning that it stirred too much bad blood. Imagine that. A ship full of cutthroats and thieves saying, "No dice allowed." You chuckle under your breath, because of course even outlaws needed to draw lines somewhere. The parchment is passed around. Men nod, some spit into their palms and slap it as though that counts for a signature. When it comes to you, the scarred man's eyes meet yours. You touch the page, and suddenly you feel part of something. No captain owns you anymore. No admiral will flog you. You belong to this crew, and you live by this code, or die by it. Rum is poured, mugs clatter. A dagger flashes, carving a mark into the mast, a sign that this ship now sails under no crown, but under a pact of its own. The air vibrates with shouts, laughter, a sudden burst of song that's more bellow than melody. You can almost feel the chains of your old life falling away. But here's the scholarly debate. Were these codes truly respected, or just window dressing? Some historians argue that when plunder was rich, men followed the rules because there was enough to go around. But when spoils grew thin, the articles mattered little, and knives settled disputes faster than ink. You can almost see it in the way one man eyes another across the firelight, his hand hovering near his blade. Still, tonight, there's a sense of unity. The quartermaster hands out weapons. A rusted pistol here, a cutlass there, even a boarding axe with notches in the blade. Each man grips his prize with a little ceremony, as if these battered tools are symbols of a new identity. The scarred man raises his cup, his voice rough as the sea. No king but the sea, no master but the wind. The cheer that follows could wake the dead. You sip from your own mug, bitter rum burning down your throat, and let the warmth spread around you. Faces glow in lantern light, grins sharp as the blades at their belts. You're bound now, not by chains, but by choice. And strangely, that feels heavier. Above, the sails ripple like the breath of some giant beast, and the stars lean in close, as if curious to see what these new outlaws will do. The dawn creeps over the horizon, a pale wash of gold spilling across the restless water. You lean against the railing, watching the ship roll with the waves, your fingers still sticky from the spilled rum of last night's oath. Something feels different. The sea air cuts sharper, the wood beneath your boots hums louder, and every man on deck seems to carry himself with a swagger he didn't have as a common sailor. It's as if you've stepped into a stage play where everyone is rehearsing their role as pirate. The first thing you notice is the clothes. Gone are the stiff naval uniforms and ragged merchant scraps. Men trade shirts and sashes, dyeing them in bright indigo, russet, or saffron, stolen from captured chests. A red scarf tied at the waist, a feather stuck in a battered hat, or a gaudy gold earring dangling from a sunburned ear. Each detail says, "I am not your servant. I am my own master." Historical fact: many pirates deliberately dressed in flamboyant colors, not only to flaunt stolen wealth, but also to intimidate. They wanted to look larger than life, monsters of the sea rather than desperate men. Odd detail: some pirates even painted their faces with gunpowder paste before battle, giving themselves a shadowy, demonic appearance. You imagine staring across the waves at such figures in the smoke and roar of cannon fire. It would chill your bones before the fight even began. But clothing is only part of the transformation. The way they speak shifts too. Coarse jokes echo louder, curses are sharper, and every sentence seems to drip with defiance. You hear a man call the captain by his first name, something unthinkable on a Navy vessel. Another makes a crude joke about splitting treasure, and instead of getting whipped, he gets a roar of laughter. This is freedom in action. And then there's you, a sailor no longer, but not yet a pirate in full. The scarred man notices, tossing a sash in your direction. "Tie it however you like," he says with a grin. "We're not a uniformed parade." You loop it around your waist, and though it's just a scrap of cloth, it feels like a crown. The ship itself mirrors the crew's transformation. Painted insignias are scratched away, flags hidden in the hold. A black square of cloth lies folded, waiting for its moment. The flag that will make every passing vessel shudder. You run your hand along the deck, wondering if you'll live to see it raised. Scholars still argue whether this transformation was overnight or gradual. Did sailors wake one morning as pirates, or did they slip into the role bit by bit? One stolen shirt, one muttered joke, one secret oath at a time. Watching these men, you sense it's both. The shift is sudden, but also a slow seep, like seawater filling a cracked hull. The quartermaster calls for a drill. Muskets are checked, cutlasses sharpened, pistols loaded with powder and ball. Men spar on deck, blades clashing, laughter mixing with grunts. You're handed a cutlass heavier than it looks, the blade pitted with old use. Your first swings are clumsy, but a grizzled pirate claps your shoulder, laughing. "Don't worry, you'll learn faster when the lead's flying." The sun climbs higher, and sweat runs down your back. But the work feels different now, less about obeying and more about belonging. Every shout, every curse, every clang of metal feels like another stitch in the patchwork of your new identity. When dusk comes, the men gather again. This time it's not to sign parchment or divide rations. It's to sing, loud and reckless, voices rising against the stars. The songs are bawdy, crooked things, but they echo with pride. One man beats a drum made from a stolen cask. Another plucks at a fiddle with broken strings, and the music weaves itself into the night. You feel it settling into your bones. You're no longer just a man at sea. You're a pirate, or at least the sea has started whispering that you are. The sea is calm, but there's a weight in the air, a hush that prickles at your skin. You grip the railing, eyes fixed on the horizon, where a faint smudge of sails teases the edge of sight. The scarred man strides across the deck, his voice low but electric. A fat merchant, heavy with cargo. The crew murmurs like restless wolves scenting blood. Your stomach twists. This is it, the moment when sailors become predators, when a ship is no longer just wood and rope, but a weapon. Men scurry across the deck, readying muskets, priming pistols, checking the powder kegs. You catch the metallic scent of flint sparks as cutlasses are sharpened, the hiss of whetstone against steel. Historical fact: pirates often relied on speed and terror more than sheer force. Their ships were usually lighter and faster than the merchant vessels they hunted. The sight of a black flag or the sudden thunder of cannon fire was often enough to make a merchant captain surrender without much of a fight. Odd detail: some pirates would even light fuses in their hair or wear smoldering slow matches around their necks, giving the impression that they were half-mad demons wreathed in smoke. You glance at one crewman now, grinning wide as he sticks a burning matchcord in his bandana, the smoke curling around his face like a devil's crown. The scarred man calls you over. His hand is heavy on your shoulder, his grin sharp. You'll be on the boarding crew. First taste is the sweetest. Your mouth goes dry, but you nod. There's no turning back. The merchant ship grows larger, sails swelling like a fat bird struggling against the wind. The quartermaster signals. A cannon booms, smoke ripping across the deck, the recoil shaking the very bones of the ship. The ball splashes wide, just a warning shot. A message: surrender or bleed. But the merchant doesn't stop. You hear shouts across the water, frantic orders, sails straining to catch the wind. They're running. Your heart thunders. Pirates don't like runners. The scarred man roars for speed, and suddenly the deck erupts in motion. Men climb rigging with the grace of spiders. Sails snap tight, and the ship lunges forward like a hunting beast. The gap closes, wave by wave. The merchant grows frantic, shots ringing from their deck. But the balls fall short, splashing uselessly. Scholars still argue whether pirate violence was excessive or exaggerated by their enemies. Were they truly bloodthirsty fiends, or did merchants paint them as monsters to justify harsh laws? Watching your crew now, faces painted, weapons ready, laughter bubbling like madness, you realize the truth may live somewhere in between. Grappling hooks soar through the air, iron teeth biting into the merchant's rail. The ships grind together, wood groaning, waves crashing between hulls. A cheer erupts, wild and feral. The boarding begins. You leap with the others, cutlass clumsy in your grip. The merchant crew scatters, some raising shaky weapons, others dropping to their knees in surrender. A clash of steel erupts, sparks flying, men shouting, curses mixing with prayers. The scarred man barrels forward like a storm, his blade carving a path. Your first strike lands awkwardly, but it's enough to send a man stumbling. Fear floods you, but so does something else, an intoxicating rush that roars in your ears, louder than the cannons. For a moment, you feel weightless, as if the sea itself is carrying you forward. And then, silence. The merchant crew collapses, weapons clattering, hands raised. The quartermaster shouts for order. The fight is over before it truly began. Treasure, or at least cargo, awaits. You stand panting on the captured deck, cutlass dripping sweat and seawater, your pulse hammering like a drum. You've tasted violence, and the sea has tasted you. Something inside has shifted, and it will never shift back. The morning after the raid, the deck smells of salt, sweat, and faint copper from scraped hands and swords. You sit cross-legged on a barrel, nursing a bruise along your ribs, watching the crew divide the spoils. Bags of coins, glittering trinkets, barrels of wine, and sacks of hardtack are spread out like a chaotic feast. Every man reaches for his share, with hands that shake from adrenaline, pride, and hunger. Rations are passed next. Salted meat, biscuits as hard as stone, and a few barrels of fresh water for those lucky enough to find them. You nibble on a piece of biscuit, grimacing as it crumbles. Odd detail. Some pirates had a strange superstition about eating the first bite of plundered food. They believed it brought luck for the next raid. You chew thoughtfully, wondering if you should bless this slice in secret. Historical fact. Pirates often face the same food problems as ordinary sailors. With the added pressure of carrying loot across long voyages, they developed preservation methods like pickling meat, storing it in barrels of salt, and occasionally adding herbs to mask the smell. Some even used ingenious techniques to drink seawater safely by mixing it with fresh rainwater or using rudimentary distillation. The scarred man sidles up, offering a flask of rum. "Drink, you've earned it," he says, eyes glinting. You take a sip, the liquid burning sweet and foul at the same time. Around you, laughter rises, men swapping tales of daring leaps, narrow escapes, and ridiculous mistakes that somehow ended in victory. One pirate boasts he once stole a loaf of bread from a port guard's pocket without being seen, only to trip on a barrel and fall into the street. Everyone roars. You notice how the ship hums differently now. It's not just wood and sails, it's alive. Every plank seems infused with the crew's energy. Men shout orders, but now the shouts are not of command, but of collaboration, keeping watch over each other as they sort loot, patch sails, and clean weapons. You feel a bond forming, a strange family of outlaws tied together by necessity and shared danger. Scholars still argue whether pirate discipline was strict or lax. Some accounts paint pirates as anarchic, with no rules at all. Others suggest that the threat of violence, combined with democratic codes and the promise of shared wealth, maintained a surprising order. Watching your crew, you realize the truth is somewhere in between. Rules enforced by mutual interest and fear alike. By midday, you're sent aloft to check rigging. The wind whips your hair, the sea spreads endlessly below. You glance down and see men laughing, joking, even singing as they pass sacks of coins and barrels. The contrast is dizzying. Life and death, fear and elation, all woven into the rhythm of the ocean. Even chores become adventures. Cleaning muskets feels like preparing for battle. Tying ropes becomes a dance against gravity and wind. Every movement sharpens your reflexes, trains your body, and steels your mind. You notice the scarred man watching from below, nodding approval. He's not a captain in the old sense. He's a mentor, a provocateur, a constant reminder that life on the edge rewards daring more than obedience. As night falls, lanterns are lit across the deck. The stars overhead gleam like scattered treasure. Rum flows, stories tumble from mouth to mouth, and laughter dances across the waves. You sip from a mug, savoring not the taste but the feeling. You're part of something larger. A living story that will travel from port to port, whispered in awe, fear, and envy. And somewhere between the salt, sweat, and laughter, you realize that survival on the sea isn't just about brute strength. It's about cunning, camaraderie, and the willingness to embrace chaos. You've stepped far from the world of obedient sailors. Tonight, you are fully, almost terrifyingly, pirate. The sun rises pale and trembling over the horizon, painting the sea in silver streaks. You stand at the bow, gripping the railing, and watch as the ship cuts through the waves like a blade. The adrenaline from the previous raid has faded, replaced by a quiet, tense anticipation. Something is coming. You can feel it in the way the crew moves. Eyes scanning the water, fingers twitching near weapons, lips pressed into tight lines. A spyglass swings toward the horizon. A scarred man leans beside you, squinting. "There," he whispers, voice low, almost reverent. A ship appears, tiny at first, then growing in size and presence. A merchantman, ripe with cargo, unaware that its fate is about to collide with yours. The crew exhales in silent coordination, movements precise, the chaos of yesterday replaced by a deadly rhythm of preparation. Historical fact: pirates often relied on surprise and intimidation to capture ships without extensive combat. The appearance of a black flag, bold posturing, and threatening maneuvers could force surrender, minimizing casualties and damage. It was a practical approach. Violence was costly, but fear was cheap. Odd detail: some pirates painted their faces with soot or ash before boarding, giving the illusion of monstrous visages. The effect was psychological warfare, making men hesitate to fight back, imagining demons rather than humans coming aboard. You glance at a crewman doing just that, a streak of black across his cheek, eyes wide and wild with intent. The quartermaster issues silent commands. Grappling hooks are readied, pistols primed, cutlasses sharpened. You follow his lead, heart hammering. Your hands shake slightly, not from fear, but from the raw thrill of the hunt. Every nerve in your body is screaming, "This is it." Scholars still argue whether pirate attacks were as relentless as stories suggest, or whether contemporary accounts exaggerated their brutality. Observing the crew now, you feel the truth is somewhere in the middle. Men who can be deadly, but not always indiscriminately so. They measure their force carefully, as any predator would. The first cannon fires, a warning shot, aimed to splash just short of the merchant's hull. Water sprays, a sharp hiss cutting across the wind. The merchant captain finally reacts, turning hard to escape, but your ship is faster. The sails flare, rigging strains, and men begin their deadly ballet across the deck. You leap with the boarding crew, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline. The clash is immediate. Cutlasses strike, a pistol goes off, a man screams as he's shoved aside. Your own first strike is clumsy but effective, forcing a merchant sailor to drop his blade. The taste of salt, sweat, and iron floods your senses, and a sharp clarity rises within. You are alive, truly alive. The battle is short. The merchant, seeing the determination and ferocity of your crew, strikes a white flag. Men cheer, weapons lowered but ready. Grappling hooks are retrieved, muskets set aside, and the spoils are gathered. Every coin, barrel, and trinket feels heavier than the day before, infused with danger and triumph. By evening, the ship rocks gently under a sky streaked with bruised purple and gold. Lanterns glow warmly across the deck. Laughter and muttered curses echo, and you sip rum, letting it burn away the tension. You watch the scarred man counting coins with a sly smile, the quartermaster tallying loot, and realize the gravity of what you've become. This is the life now. Survival, danger, cunning, and camaraderie. Every day at sea is a lesson. Every night a story. And you are learning fast. The horizon stretches endlessly, but you know one truth with certainty. You are no longer a sailor. You are pirate-born, molded by hardship, cunning, and the intoxicating lure of the lawless sea. The following morning, the ship drifts into a gentle fog, a gray blanket muffling the cries of gulls and the slap of waves against the hull. You lean over the railing, watching water swirl beneath, each ripple reflecting a fragmented sky. There's a strange calm after the storm of yesterday, but it's deceptive. The ocean has a memory, and every pirate knows that calm is merely a prelude. Men move quietly across the deck, repairing sails, patching rigging, checking weapons. You notice how every glance carries weight, every step measured. The scarred man approaches, his eyes scanning the horizon, hand resting lightly on the hilt of his cutlass. He doesn't speak at first. Instead, he gestures toward the fog, and you realize he's testing you, seeing if you've learned the unspoken language of the ship. Anticipation, awareness, readiness. Historical fact: pirates often relied heavily on vigilance and scouting. Fog, hidden reefs, and enemy ships could all turn a profitable raid into disaster. Experienced crews developed habits of constant observation, signaling silently, and training eyes to catch subtle changes in the water or sky. Odd detail: some pirates developed watch rituals, like tapping their boots in specific sequences or whistling certain tones, meant to alert fellow crew members of movement without alarming outsiders. You try the rhythm, stumbling at first, then catching the flow, feeling a strange connection to the unseen watchers along the deck. The fog begins to thin, revealing a small island rising from the horizon like a secret treasure. The crew reacts immediately, pulling out maps, debating landing points, and checking the surrounding waters for hidden shoals or enemy ships. You notice the quiet intensity in their voices, orders clipped, suggestions interwoven, all with a rhythm honed by countless hours at sea. Scholars still argue about pirate strategy, whether their raids were carefully pre-planned or opportunistic gambles. Observing the current scene, it's clear that while chance plays a role, preparation and knowledge are the backbone of survival. You understand that every man's life depends not just on courage, but on understanding wind, tide, and timing. A scarred man leans close, voice low. Tomorrow we strike deeper, but tonight we prepare. You follow him into the hold, where barrels of food, water, and ammunition are checked. The smell of salt, rum, and leather mixes into a pungent perfume that feels like the heartbeat of the ship itself. You catch a glimpse of men tending small injuries, cleaning swords, and whispering quietly about past voyages. Tales of treasure, narrow escapes, and brushes with death are exchanged like sacred scripture. One sailor shows a small, hand-carved charm meant to bring luck in battle, its edges worn smooth by fingers over countless raids. You touch it lightly, wondering if the talisman carries weight beyond superstition. By nightfall, the lanterns cast a warm glow across the deck, shadows dancing like restless spirits. Men settle into small clusters, swapping stories and laughter, but the tension never fully dissipates. You sip rum, letting it coat your throat and calm your mind, and feel the duality of life at sea: camaraderie and violence, freedom and constant danger, thrill and dread, all entwined. As you lay down to rest, the ship rocking gently beneath you, you understand something vital. Being a pirate isn't just about raids and treasure. It's about learning to live with uncertainty, to embrace both the beauty and brutality of the sea, and to trust the men who stand beside you. The next morning, the horizon glows with the first blush of sunlight, and you wake to the rhythmic lapping of waves against the hull. The scarred man is already pacing the deck, eyes sharp, a subtle smile playing at the corners of his lips. Today promises work, danger, and maybe a hint of glory, and you can feel the electricity of anticipation in the air. You join the crew as they prepare the ship for a covert landing on the island spotted yesterday. Sails are adjusted, weapons checked, and small groups assigned tasks with precise efficiency. Every movement is deliberate, every glance a signal. There is no chaos here, at least not the kind that leaves lives wasted. Instead, there's a tense, fluid coordination born of necessity. Historical fact: pirate crews often had to master a wide array of skills beyond sailing, from navigation and combat to carpentry and cooking. Each man's survival depended on versatility, and the most successful crews rewarded initiative and cunning over rank alone. Odd detail: some pirates carried small, peculiar charms or trinkets believed to ward off misfortune on land and sea. You notice one sailor twirling a tiny carved dolphin on a string, murmuring a prayer to unseen forces before the landing. Superstition mingled with strategy, and sometimes it made all the difference. The scarred man calls a meeting at the bow. He spreads a roughly drawn map across a barrel. The island's jagged cliffs, hidden coves, and small rivers are sketched in haste, yet clearly. He outlines the plan: a quick landing, avoid the patrols, seize supplies, and retreat before anyone realizes they've been raided. The crew listens with sharp intensity, eyes gleaming with excitement. Scholars still debate whether pirate tactics were truly sophisticated or largely opportunistic. Observing the crew now, it's clear that while luck plays a role, planning and understanding of the environment are critical. Every decision, from landing points to escape routes, demonstrates a cunning born of experience. You grab a satchel with essential supplies, the weight comforting. Around you, men move with practiced grace, loading weapons and equipment, checking each other's gear with silent nods. The camaraderie is palpable. Trust is currency, more valuable than gold. A misstep could mean capture, or worse. The boat is lowered, creaking against the waves, and you step inside, feeling the cold spray of water on your face. Rowing quietly, you approach the island, hearts hammering with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Every sound, the lapping of water, the cry of gulls, the whisper of leaves in hidden coves, seems amplified. Landing is tense, but uneventful. The crew fans out, moving like shadows, collecting what they came for: barrels of food, small chests of coin, and supplies that will ensure their survival for weeks. Your hands are steady, your senses alert. The scarred man signals from the rear, eyes sharp, ensuring no one lags or strays. By the time you reboard the ship, the sun has climbed higher, warming your soaked clothes. You glance at the horizon, imagining countless merchant ships just beyond reach, each one a potential prize, each one a reminder of why you made the choice to follow this path. You are no longer a man at sea. You are part of something lawless, dangerous, yet exhilarating. Fully a pirate, bound by oaths, cunning, and the infinite expanse of the ocean. And as the ship sails away from the island, the wind catching in the sails, you feel a quiet thrill. This is only the beginning of your life beyond the law. Every wave promises another challenge, another story, another chance to survive and thrive where few dare. The evening settles softly across the deck, and you find a quiet spot leaning against the railing. The waves lap gently, a lullaby of the sea, and the scent of salt mingles with the faint warmth of lanterns. The crew rests nearby, murmuring softly, their laughter now a distant echo, leaving space for the gentle rhythm of the ocean to dominate. You trace your fingers along the wood, feeling the grooves worn smooth by countless boots and hands, imagining the countless stories that have traveled these planks. Somewhere in the distance, a gull cries, a solitary sound that slices through the calm like a reminder of the vast world beyond. The scarred man sleeps in the shadow of the mast, and you wonder at the resilience it takes to thrive here, in a life balanced on the edge of danger and freedom. Odd little details catch your eye. The glint of a coin tucked into a barrel, the sway of a lantern in the evening breeze, the curl of rope ends that will one day tighten a sail or secure a treasure chest. Scholars still argue whether pirate life was sheer chaos or surprisingly structured. And sitting here in the hush of night, you can see how both truths coexist. Structure born of necessity, chaos born of instinct. You breathe in deeply, letting the salt-tinged air fill your lungs, and for a moment, you can imagine the story not as danger or struggle, but as a gentle hum beneath the vast sky. The ocean rocks the ship slowly, a cradle moving with timeless patience. You close your eyes, letting the soft sounds of water and wind wrap around you, each ripple and gust a whisper of the adventures yet to come. And as the lanterns flicker, sending tiny shadows across the deck, you feel a comfort in belonging, part of a crew, part of the sea, part of a legend that stretches across horizons. The adrenaline fades, leaving a warmth that is both quiet and profound. You are no longer a sailor who follows orders. You are a pirate, living fully in each moment, yet lulled gently into rest by the endless, soothing rhythm of the waves. The stars above twinkle faintly, as if nodding to the stories told, and those yet to unfold. You exhale slowly, letting your heartbeat sync with the sea, and feel the quiet assurance that tomorrow brings more. More challenges, more daring, more of the wild freedom that only the ocean can offer. Sleep comes lightly, like a soft tide rising around you, and the ship rocks gently under the quiet spell of night. In the distance, the whisper of waves promises adventures, lessons, and laughter yet to be experienced. And you, lulled by salt, wind, and memory, drift into dreams shaped by the lawless beauty of pirate life. End of script. Sweet dreams.